The Heart Sutra is supposed to be the very essence of Buddha's teachings. And it's called the Prajnaparamita, which is the perfection of wisdom, is what it translates as out from Sanskrit. And so in the invocation it says, Om Namo Bhagavate Arya Prajnaparamitaye. Homage to the perfection of wisdom, the lovely, the holy. So basically it's just paying tribute to this teaching, this state of consciousness, this awareness. I didn't know this before, but I found out after doing some research that the Heart Sutra, which is the most famous sutra in all of Mahayana Buddhism. I mean, all Zen monasteries do it every day in the morning. They do the Heart Sutra. They beat on that little frog and chant it. And in all the Tibetan monasteries, they chant the Gati Gati Paragati Parasum Gati Bodhisvaha, which is the mantra of the Heart Sutra. But Buddha didn't actually teach this teaching. This sutra was not written, they believe, sometime in the period of 300 to 700 AD, which was 1,000 years to 1,400 years after Buddha was here. They believe that it was actually written in China and was derived from writings from the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutra, which was written by Nagarjuna in India. And then it was reverse translated back into Sanskrit. So it's really questionable about where the sutra is from, but that's not really important, you know. I don't get all caught up in who wrote it or when it was written or in what language. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this sutra just to do a discourse on some of these higher awarenesses that we talk about in the Mystic Seven. I'm not going to go into it today, but the first four are the source, eternity, unity, infinity. The source, eternity, infinity, and unity. So the first four are basically the state that one abides in when they're in an enlightened state of consciousness. They look around and everything that they see is eternal and infinite and not separate. Even though there still is separation, they'll see me and you as one, but you're over there and I'm over here. And so there's still separation even though they have the unity experience or a taste of it. They still see everything outside of themselves when you abide in this enlightened state. And then one day, you know, a week later, a month later, in my case it was 2 years I walked around in that thinking that I had finished the process and we were all divine light and energy flowing through the universe, and then one day I found out that that wasn't the end. And you go into a state of nothingness. And this state of nothingness is actually the exact same state as asamprajnata samadhi, which I believe most of you have heard the definition from, but we'll talk about it some more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Heart Sutra. Actually, I'm not going to use the Heart Sutra. No, we are. We're going to use it sort of as a structure to look at these three states of consciousness that are beyond enlightenment. Nothingness, neither affirmation nor negation, and no essential nature. And these three states of consciousness are talked about, not extensively in Buddhism and Hinduism, but you can find them in the very highest teachings. Nagarjuna talks about it, Osho talks about it. Don has a list of about 5 other people. The Yoga Vasista talks about it. Ashtavaka Gita talks about it. So there are writings on this, but most people do not ever attempt to discuss these last 3, mainly because it doesn't sell very well. You talk about peace, love, and harmony, and flowers and roses, you can sell that all day, but when you talk about nothingness and this void and stuff and destroying your ego and never returning, people kind of get turned off, so they don't talk too much about it. And then there aren't a lot of people that can, because again, it can't be an intellectual debate or discussion. And like I said, even in preparing for this discourse today, I have to stop and get out of the mind and drop into this state before I can even try or attempt to express it, because I can't do it from the brain. It's impossible. There's no way to do it. So this all came about because we were talking about samadhi and this kavalya and these other higher states of awareness. And all of a sudden I had this realization that the Heart Sutra, which most people claimed is on the emptiness of all phenomenon, that is supposedly what the teaching is about, is in fact not exclusively about only the emptiness of all phenomenon. It is also about the state of nothingness, or asam prajnata samadhi, no essential nature, which is emptiness, and neither affirmation or negation. And so what I did was I spent the last 2 days getting ready for this talk, because I have no idea what I was going to do when I got here, and just prepared. We'll probably only get about halfway through it today, but I'll be able to send you guys the rest of it when I finish it tomorrow. And we're not going to finish it because I don't have finished. We're not going to finish it because it's going to take probably 4 to 6 hours to cover this sutra. The sutra is only that long, and that is both Sanskrit and English. So really the sutra is only a half a page. It's very, very short. It's only, I can't even remember how many sentences. But it's pretty complex, so we're not going to just fly right through it. In fact, they say that if you can understand the sutra, that you are fully enlightened, that you'll be fully awake. All you have to do is read this over and over and over until you get it, and you're done. The only problem is you can't get it up here. You have to get it in here. So we'll begin with the first line. And the first line is, which I already read, Om Namah Bhagavataye Arya Prajna Paramitaye, which is basically homage to the perfection of wisdom, the lovely, the holy. And then it says, Avalokiteshvara, the holy Lord and Bodhisattva, was moving in the deep course of the wisdom which has gone beyond. Avalokiteshvara, the holy Lord and Bodhisattva, was moving in the deep course of the wisdom which has gone beyond. Now the first 10 or 20 times that I've read this sutra, I just flew right through that. First of all, I knew who Avalokiteshvara was, and I kind of knew what they were talking about. So I just read that line and just skipped right to the next one. And then read that line and skipped right to the next one. I said, okay, here's where the meat of the sutra is. But in actuality, that first line is one of the most important ones in the sutra. Not because of Avalokiteshvara, who is, if you don't know, the Buddha of compassion. The Dalai Lama is supposedly the physical incarnation of Avalokiteshvara. And that's why he is, one of the reasons why he is looked upon with such reverence, is that he is supposedly the embodied deity of this compassionate Buddha. So Avalokiteshvara comes in a bunch of different forms. There's the forearm where she holds the jewels and the malas and stuff. There's the 1,000-arm Avalokiteshvara, and there's all these beautiful stories behind this deity. But the important part is that this Bodhisattva, which is not male or female, this Bodhisattva is abiding in this state of wisdom which is beyond. And this is the state of consciousness that I call samadhi. Now again, there are a lot of definitions of samadhi. There are a lot of different types of samadhi. Some people say samadhi is kavalya. Some people say it's just a contemplative thing, which is unbelievable to me, because samadhi has nothing to do with contemplation. It is that state of consciousness beyond everything else. Asam prajnata samadhi. So basically this deity, or this person, or you, is abiding in this state of awareness, which is beyond. And this is samadhi. I've already mentioned that I believe most people misinterpret this entire sutra as being only a sutra on emptiness, the nature of phenomena. I also believe that the mantra at the end of it, the emphasis is placed in the wrong place. The mantra is Gati Gati, Paragati, Parasum Gati, Bodhi Svaha. And it's translated gone, gone, gone beyond, altogether gone beyond, enlightenment, all hail. And most people that translate it exactly like that. Gone, gone, gone beyond, altogether gone beyond, enlightenment. Svaha, I'm there. All hail, amen, whatever. But I think the emphasis is actually gone, gone, gone beyond, altogether gone beyond enlightenment. Because again, enlightenment is still something. It still has concepts. It still has ideas. Until you abide in that place for an extended period of time, it's hard to understand. But they're still suffering. A lot of people that will abide in an enlightened state are trying to save the world. And their very attempt to save the world brings them suffering. Because all they see is suffering people. Once you go beyond enlightenment, you still see suffering, but you also see instantaneously at the same time only the source. And also the perfect manifestation of that suffering so the source can have that experience. Otherwise it would be finite. It's just the inflection. Instead of gone, gone, gone beyond, hey, I made it to enlightenment, so hot, it's gone beyond enlightenment. And Osho is one of several people who actually does a beautiful discourse on this. If you're ever interested, you can read his book. It's actually, you don't even have to read the book. The first paragraph in his book, Beyond Enlightenment, talks about how enlightenment is the last host. It is the most beautiful expression that you can ever have as a human being, but it is still an experience experienced by an individual, not the source itself. So we're going to talk about that which is beyond this state of enlightenment, that which is beyond enlightenment. So what is nothingness, awesome prajnata samadhi, and why is it important? One of the main misunderstandings about nothingness is that nothingness is not a place. It is a state of consciousness where the everythingness can be perceived. Nothingness is not a place. It is a state of consciousness where everythingness can be perceived. The problem is, in awesome prajnata samadhi, there is no one there to perceive anything. The ego has been completely destroyed. There is no more perceiver. This is why when you go into a deep meditative state, and there is no perception, there is no sound, there is no voice. There can be ambulances driving by on the street, cicadas singing in the trees, jackhammers going off next to you, and you don't hear a sound. You're not asleep. You've just gone to this place of nothingness, where there is no perceiver, and therefore nothing is perceived. But that everythingness is there. Now, even though that huge problem of not having a perceiver is apparent, that problem is actually its greatest benefit, because you have completely left the ego behind. And because you've completely left the ego behind, guess what you're abiding in? Pure consciousness as the source. So, for about a year now, I've been describing this place, and I even have it written down, which I'm going to have to change now, that in this state of awesome prajnata samadhi, when you have left the individual, the perceiver, the perception behind, are abiding and are abiding in just this pure awareness, with no sights, no sounds, no visions, but that it's everythingness is there. What I used to say was that whereas you can't tell when you're in samadhi, because there's no perceiver, there's no perception, you can tell when you come out of samadhi. Because all of a sudden you go, whoa, there's the cicadas in the tree, or hey, what's that ambulance doing? Or, oh, I can smell the resins again, or the mantra comes back, or something brings you back and you can hear this sound, or smell this fragrance, or something you become aware of and go, I'm back. And I've often said that in that moment, when you come back from that state of this nothingness, this pure abiding in source, you can bring back with you a direct personal experience from there. Whether it's your eternal nature, your infinite nature, that you are one with everything and never separate from anything again. But what I found out 2 days ago was that isn't actually what happens. When your eyes are closed and you go into awesome prajnata samadhi, the individual is completely left behind. And you are abiding in pure awareness. And for one fraction of a second, when you open your eyes, it is the source itself that is witnessing through the unveiled manifestation of thought. And then all of a sudden, the ego comes back. And the mind engages and you go, oh, that was beautiful. And the moment you say that, and you've created the objective and subjective reality again, and you're back into the illusion. And you're back into the ego and your identity of I am Don, or I am Bob, or I am Sue, or I am Linda. But for that fraction of a second, because the ego has been destroyed and left behind, when the eyes open, it is pure consciousness, the source itself, that is witnessing all reality through unveiled eyes. And that is completely different than how I used to explain it, where you come back from someplace. How can you come back from someplace? There's no separation. There is no there is no here. How can you bring something back that you already have and always have had? That is your very nature. And so now that I'm having to express this, and fortunately I have partly the discipline that I have, and this very good person over here that keeps me, the iron to the fire, or whatever you want to call it, or my butt to the fire, I have to be very, very careful about the way I express things, because one single word can change the entire meaning of what this experience is about and what it's like. And it can change it from you understanding that you are the source to you believing that you are Carol having an experience. And those are two completely different things, because you are only the source. You are not Carol. Never have been, never will be. You are the source. So in this place of nothingness, no place, remember, is not a place. In this state of consciousness of nothingness, of asamprajnata samadhi, the importance of it is because that's the only time the ego is left behind and you can abide in your pure awareness. So this is going to be a little out there because I don't think we've talked about it much. But I do need to conclude this part of the first line of the sutra with this statement. And that is, this experience of the source seeing through an unveiled manifestation of thought cannot be done as the source itself. You as the source cannot perceive anything because there is nothing there to perceive with. There is just the source. And as a veiled manifestation of thought, or an illusory ego, or an illusory physical body, all you can see is the illusion. You cannot see the truth of how things exist as long as it is veiled and you believe that you're an individual. So the only time that this experience can happen, and this has really got me excited today, and makes it recognize why people have this unbelievably profound experience. Well, it's not people, it's the source going, woo-hoo-hoo! I felt my nature for the first time in a billion years, you know? Because as the source, it's just abiding in the emptiness, in the dark void, you know? And yes, it's experiencing its infinite nature through all the other veiled manifestations of thought, all the infinite manifestations of thought. But the only problem is, through those veiled thoughts, it's seeing only illusion. It's not seeing truth. It's not going, look, there I am, sitting right there in front of me. But when you come out of that state of pure silence and asamprajnata samadhi, and you open up your eyes or you hear that first sound for that fraction of a second, the source is witnessing through unveiled manifestation. And that can become prolonged until the point to the source can abide in that all the time. And that is what I believe is called Kavaya. The state where it is an uninterrupted experience of pure awareness. No ego left. The source is simply witnessing through the eyes of an unveiled manifestation of thought within its own mind, of the infinite universe that abides. So nothingness is not a place. It's very, very important. It is a state of consciousness. The second line says, he looked down from on high, and he held but 5 heaps or aggregates. Again, very, very confusing, and it took me a long time to find a very good definition of what this is supposed to mean. And basically, the 5 heaps or aggregates are the 5 components that come together to create an individual. They are form, feelings, perception, impulses, and consciousness. They are created using the 6 sense organs, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, and their corresponding senses. So these 5 heaps, the form, the feelings, the perception, the impulses, and consciousness itself are what they were referring to as these 5 heaps. And they are the components that come to create an individual. This person, believe it or not, this has all those 5 aggregates in it. Oh, we've talked about that at the workshop, didn't we? God can see through this bowl just as easy as it can through you, because it does not need eyes to see, but we'll go there today. So everything, all phenomenon, has these 5 heaps. And that's actually, I could probably go into that for probably an hour, but I don't need to because everyone in this room has already done that. But the next time I do this discourse, if it's for somebody that hasn't, if there's a group that hadn't, I will probably extend that because it's very important to know that when the Bodhisattva looked down, I think that's kind of silly, looked down from on high. You know, where's he looking down from? He's in his own mind. So when the Bodhisattva looks out, and that's just as bad too, and sees these 5 heaps, he sees those not just in people and in sentient beings, he sees them in everything. He sees them in the rocks, and the trees, and the tables, and the couches, the computers, the cars, the lights, the bricks, the mortar, everything. And when he looks at these 5 heaps, he sees they are empty. I found it very interesting when I was looking at this sutra. Again, these first 2 lines, I always just read right through them. I'm like, yeah, 5 heaps, you know, and that he's abiding in this state, and I'm just going on and on. But getting ready for this discourse today, I realized that almost every single word in those first 2 lines is critical because it introduces and brings in the very foundation of the entire sutra, the beyondness that it talks about at the very end. The very last line of the sutra is the mantra, gone, gone, gone beyond. Altogether gone beyond enlightenment, svaha. And whereas I have not prepared the entire discourse, I believe that these first 3 or 4 lines are probably the most important. So I broke this first line into 2 parts. He looked down from on high, and he beheld but 5 aggregates. We talk about, in the Mystic 7, 3 types of samadhi, even though there are dozens and dozens of them. There are 3 very important ones. The asamprajnata samadhi that we just discussed, where the eyes are closed, there is no perceiver, there is no perception. You're just abiding as the source in this emptiness, this void. Everything's there. The everything is there. Because it's not a place, it's a state of consciousness, and so that everythingness is there, but it is not perceived. The difference is, in some prajnata samadhi, the eyes can be open, or you can be listening to music, or listening to smelling fragrances. The very first time I experienced that I can remember some prajnata samadhi was traveling over the Mississippi Bridge in Louisiana, and I was telling my wife how I believed that we were all pure divine energy, and that we were just love flowing throughout the universe. And she said, "Don't you see, David? You still have God in a box." And as soon as she said that, my last concept was broken, because that was my last one. Peace, love, and harmony, it's all energy flowing through the universe. It's the love box. And she said, "You can't put God in a box." And the moment she said that, I dropped into samadhi. But the only difference was my eyes were open. I was looking out across the Mississippi River, and all of a sudden, the river disappears, and the bridge disappears, and the cars disappear, and the sky disappears. I'm still perceiving them. My eyes are open, the river's still there, But something's happened to it. And I never knew how to explain it before. But now I do. It's because everything had become empty. The emptiness that they talk about in the Heart Sutra is this state of phenomenon. The state of all phenomenon. When I look at you, I do not see a person. I do not see a man. I do not see a father. I do not see an employee or an employer. I see none of that. I see pure source. Empty of any description or label or idea or concept. Pure emptiness. That's all I see, the source right there. So some prajnata samadhi still has this emptiness, this nothingness to it, but the eyes are open. There's something seen. It's just not seen the same way anymore. And this can happen in an instant, watching a sunrise or a sunset. For that brief second, there is no thought of sunset or me watching it. There is only the beauty and experience of sunset itself. And then the mind engages and it goes, oh, look how beautiful that is. And the moment you say, look at how beautiful that is, again, you've created an objective and subjective reality. All illusion comes flying in with suffering and turmoil and chaos and everything else, and love and joy and happiness as well. But the illusion is there because you believe that you are separate from that again. And again, this state can become established in. With practice, you can learn to stay in some prajnata samadhi. That's what I do. That's why when I look at you, all I see is God. Because I have allowed my mind to become completely destroyed and not believe all these old ideas and thoughts and concepts of what I'm seeing in front of me. And that's not only a cognitive process, it had to be experiential as well. You have to have both. If you have the experience without the self-inquiry, it's not full knowledge. And if you have the inquiry without the experience, it's basically what I call a bliss ninny, because the first time something goes bad, you go, ah! Because you don't have this experience of eternity, which is what someone's going through right now, of dealing with it. So some prajnata samadhi, nothingness is still present. There is no perceiver, and even though there is perception, emptiness is the only thing being perceived. Nothingness, or samadhi, is a state of consciousness. Emptiness, that is talked about in the Heart Sutra, is a state of phenomenon, of all phenomenon. This is very, 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 very important. That nothingness is a state of consciousness. And within that state of consciousness abides the everythingness, because it's not a place. Therefore, it is not nihilistic. The everythingness is in that state of consciousness. And emptiness is the state of all illusory phenomenon. I look out and I see a person, wrong, illusion. I look out and I see pure source, emptiness, truth. I look out and I see a camera, no, illusion. I look out and see pure consciousness, the source, emptiness, truth. So asam prajnata samadhi or sam prajnata samadhi, nothingness is the state the source abides in, a state of consciousness. Emptiness is the state which all phenomena appears in. And then the last line of that first opening sentence is, and he saw that in their own being they were empty. which is what I was just describing. When I look out at you, I do not see a person. I do not see a body. I do not see a human being. I only see the source. And because you're not a human being, and not a body, and not a person, and not a woman, and not a mother, you're empty of all those qualities. And because you're empty of all of those qualities, because you are the source, you have no essential nature. Because your nature as God is everything. You are bound by nothing. You are infinite, eternal, and separate from nothing.